Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So this week, as you can see, a chance to do a bit of watercolor landscape painting. As I've said before, maybe a couple of weeks ago, I haven't been doing as much watercolor painting over the last few months. I've been spending a lot more time doing charcoal drawing, which isn't a bad thing. I love doing the charcoal drawing. But I also love doing the watercolor painting, and so I'm going to try to get a bit more of a balance and start doing a bit more watercolor painting again. If you're interested in the materials that I'm using, I've left a description or a list of the materials in the description box below. I think there may be a few reasons why I haven't done as much watercolor painting recently. But one of the reasons is just the color palette. So the color palette that I usually use with these watercolor landscapes, sort of blues and yellows. As I've said before, I always feel as though it's more suited towards the warmer months, the warmer seasons, spring and summer. And then the charcoal and graphite drawings, the color palette is more muted, so I always feel as though it's better suited towards the colder months, sort of colder seasons, winter and autumn. But now that we're moving back into spring, maybe it's a chance to start doing a bit more of the watercolor painting. And you might be thinking, what's he talking about, moving back into spring? It's only February. For many people it may still be snow on the ground, but I like to be a little bit different, and I don't necessarily always go with the modern times. So I don't use the modern calendar. I use an old-fashioned Celtic farming calendar. In that old calendar, it's based around the equinox, the spring and autumn equinox, and on that also the solstice, the summer solstice and winter solstice. So in that old calendar, March 21st-ish isn't the start of spring like I think the modern calendar says, but rather is the middle of spring. It's the spring equinox, it's the middle of spring. And the same, for example, the summer solstice in June, third week in June, the longest day, it is also Midsummer's Day in that old calendar. So, as I say, in my mind, this is the beginning of spring. So it's a good time for me to get back into watercolor painting. I was looking through some of my old paintings, and I think I'm going, at least with the watercolor, move back more towards the impressionist style, I think, rather than this minimalist style. I think the minimalist style, I like it with the charcoal drawings. But with the watercolor painting, I'm not as convinced. I don't think it's bad. It's just I prefer the sort of older impressionist style that I used to do maybe a year or so ago. So I'm going to try and get back into that. It's easy to say, oh yes, I'll just start doing it that way again. But I haven't done it that way for quite a while. So it's a case of teaching myself how to do it that way again. This week, I only have one little short story to tell you. It's nothing to do with what I've just been talking about. It was just something interesting I came across, and I would like to share it with you. And it was an artist. So I say I'm interested in minimalism, and I was doing some searches on artists who were influenced by minimalism. And one of the names that came up was Carmen Herrera. To be honest, I'd never heard of her before. She was born in Cuba way back, I think in the 1920s or 30s, maybe even before that. She married a guy from New York, so after getting married, they went to live in New York, and she was an artist. And this was late 1940s, early 1950s. So of course the art world in New York anyway, at that time was abstract expressionism. But the sort of art that she was doing, yes, it was influenced by that abstract expressionism, but she also brought in some ideas of minimalism. And she was maybe one of the early people to introduce a bit of minimalism into their artwork. One of the interesting things about her was that she sold her first painting in 2004. And if you think about it, when she got started into art, it was way back in the, 1940s. In other words, it took a while to sell her first painting. She was actually 89 years old when she sold her first painting. And she had her first major solo exhibition when she was 101 years old. So it was just an interesting story, I thought. I struggle with art, getting back into art, and other people have told me that, they're going through their own struggles as well. Maybe the takeaway from this is don't give up. She didn't give up. She started in the 1940s. It took 70, 80 years, but she sold her first painting and then had a major exhibition. So I guess the story for all of us is don't give up. You never know what might happen in the future. This is a scan of the final painting. As I say, it's that sort of minimalist style, which I don't dislike, but as I say, I want to get back into more impressionist style. Anyway, I thought that story about Carmen might be interesting. It was inspiring anyway for me. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching, thank you for listening to me, and hopefully see you in next week's video.